That's one of the reasons why we have the concept of contempt of court. We don't want outsiders to mock our courts, because at the end of the day, we need people to abide the courts. We need people to say, all right, I disagree with the ruling, but I respect it enough. I played the game. I knew the rules. I lost under the rules. I respect the rules enough that I'll take my lumps. But when you have contempt for the courts, or when you bring the administration of justice into disrepute, the reason why that's so dangerous is because then the losing side said, I didn't lose, actually. The court is rotten. The court is corrupt. And what I fear happened last week, on the eve of the weekend, the long weekend, what a perfect time to drop the most atrocious civil liberties bombshell. I wasn't the closest watcher, but Rebel News watched those proceedings of the Trucker Commission more closely than anyone else. As you know, we were in Ottawa. We had a pop-up studio. We had our team in the city, in the room, following the commission. And as you know, not a single police officer, not a single police chief said we needed martial law to stop these hot tubs and bouncy castles. Not a single policeman said there was a riot, there was a grave danger, there was an insurrection, there was a revolution, there was a danger to the sovereignty of the country. Not one said that. And the reason I emphasize that is because the Emergencies Act was built with it was like a two-key fail-safe. You know, those old Cold War videos of how the nuclear missiles would be launched. Two people with separate keys had to turn them at the same time. Did you ever see an image of that? So no one person could launch a nuclear missile. They had the fail-safe. They had the safety catch. You needed two people to insert their keys at once and turn them at once, and they were far enough apart that it couldn't be the same person. Did you ever see that? And the reason is they didn't want to send off a nuclear missile because of one madman, one suicidal maniac. You needed at least two people to sign off on it. And my analogy is, for the Emergencies Act to approve of martial law, two things had to happen at the same time, like two keys in the ICBM. Number one, the emergency had to be so grave that it was putting the nation itself in danger, like an insurrection, a rebellion, like a war, like a mass traumatic event. And if I'm having trouble coming up with examples of them, yeah, because 9/11 itself did not trip that wire. Remember when the ISIS terrorists burst into Parliament Hill, shooting bullets with MPs hiding behind desks? That did not trip the wire of the Emergencies Act. It has never used before. So it had to be for a grave danger to the survival, the existential survival of the state itself. That's the first key on the first ICBM key that had to be turned. But that key is not enough if you didn't have the second key at the same time to be turned, which is even if there was a grave existential danger to the country, even if you had a mass insurrection, riot, revolution, mutiny, okay, then go to step two. Go to the second ICBM launch key. Could the problem be taken care of with existing laws? Obviously, and indeed it was. For example, the Windsor Bridge blockade, the Ambassador Bridge between Canada and the United States, one of the most important bridges in the world, really, in terms of commerce, that was cleared without violence in, 48 hours before the Emergencies Act was invoked. So, first of all, blocking a bridge for 2 days is a problem, but it was not an existential crisis to the country. But even if it was, which it was not, the police cleared it without incident, without martial law. And so it was with the Coots blockade between the Alberta and Montana border. The Coots border crossing, there were trucks and farm vehicles there, again, cleared without incident before martial law was brought in. So how on earth could you say both fail-safes were broken? There was a national catastrophe, and it could only be dealt with through the martial law. And anyone who in the background now you can see our truckerdocumentary.com. We had people on the ground there in Coutts. Oh boy, it was so cold, wasn't it? We had Kian Simone and Sidney Fazard down there embedded with the truckers for days and for weeks, actually. They caught every moment of it. It was incredible. My point to you is every single police officer, every single police chief who testified said the same thing. They said, sure, more tools for policing is good for us, but we didn't need them. We didn't ask for them. So how could a judge listen to not one or two, but every single police officer saying, yeah, we didn't need that. Sure, you give us more tools, we'll use them, but we didn't need those insane Venezuela-style, Cuba-style, martial law, military in the streets tools. We didn't need them. We didn't ask for them. We didn't need them. How can a judge listen to expert after expert say, yeah, I've been being a policeman for 30 years. We didn't need extra power. And that's the thing, is the law, the Emergencies Act, was written as a civil liberties check on the power of the state. It was not written to be read expansively. Here's what I mean by that. Justice Rouleau said, people can disagree with me, and there is a reasonable interpretation that this wasn't justified, but I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give an expansive, liberal treatment of this law and say, yeah, it is. I can see how the government might have, could have, should have, would have needed this. So there's a lot of ways you can look at this where they didn't, but there is a way that this can be justified, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. That is incorrect law. The liberty, the expansion, the liberalness, the generosity ought to have been in favor of civil liberties. The whole purpose of the Emergencies Act is to corral, to fence in the authoritarian instincts of the government, not to say, well, no, they really thought they needed them. And Trudeau, you saw the testimony. One of the big motivators was Trudeau was embarrassed politically. In fact, one of the things that Justice Rouleau said was, the government failed in all its other ways, so sure, why not let them try this emergency? Give them the sledgehammer because they were so useless with other tools. I'm sorry, that is not what the Emergencies Act is for. The Emergencies Act was to preserve liberty. Everything about the Emergencies Act had to be read in favor of civil liberties, not in favor of authoritarianism. And the chief error made by Judge Rouleau, besides that neither the two keys for the ICBMs, not even both, but neither one of them was met, was that he gave the benefit of the doubt in every case to the riot cop, to the baton, to the riot gun shot at Alexa Lavoie. In every single case, he gave the benefit of the doubt to the authoritarian state, when the express purpose of the Emergencies Act was to do the opposite, was to give the benefit of the doubt to freedom. What a disgrace. What a banana republic moment. Very frustrating to me. I want to play for you a few clips from that. I know it was a few days ago, but that's what they want. They want it buried. No. Pay no attention to the 2 years of lockdowns and abuses. Pay no attention to when we literally seized your bank accounts, not just the bank accounts of protesters, but their wives and children. Like most families, I think, have joint bank accounts where the husband and the wife have access, and you freeze a bank account because a trucker is honking his horn in Ottawa. You've frozen the bank account for his wife to get food, for his son and daughter to get medicine, to pay for school. And this was done in a ham-fisted way. And the judge said, no, that's fine. Because I can see, there is a way, if you look at it just right, if you just hold it this way and look at it in certain conditions, in this light, yeah, you could justify it. And here's the greatest damage done. Obviously, it was an inside job. It was a stitch-up, as they say in the UK. A part of the establishment approved the other part of the establishment. A judge appointed by Justin Trudeau, appointed to this commission, that is, by Justin Trudeau, exonerated Justin Trudeau. Isn't that handy? The government investigated itself with a mandate drafted by Trudeau and exonerated Trudeau. Isn't that? I'm shocked by that. And here's the point. Is trust in institutions is at an all-time low in Canada. How do you feel? Do you trust official doctors and public health experts now more or less than you did 4 years ago? Do you trust the media more or less than you did 4 years ago? Do you trust courts and lawyers and law professors and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms more or less than you did 3 years ago? Do you trust the government more or less than you did 3 years ago? Do you trust any establishment, any institution more or less than you did 3 years ago? The media, I think, is the most important one there. Do you trust the College of Physicians and Surgeons more than you did 3 years ago? This same college that if a doctor dared to write an exemption letter or to say someone didn't have to wear a mask or didn't have to take the vaccine because it was dangerous to them, they would be suspended. Oh, hey, all doctors are unanimous. Yeah, because you suspended the dissenters. And so we just had the worst civil liberties bonfire in Canadian history. And they send in someone to say, no, it's okay. No, take it from me. I'm a judge. And take it from me, it was okay. Yeah, I'm here to say it's okay. So do you think that convinced people who knew it wasn't okay? Or do you think this judge actually convinced anyone that the truckers were a grave national danger? Do you think this judge actually convinced anyone that the only way to deal with them was to seize their bank accounts, to deploy riot horses, to shoot our reporter Alexa Lavoie in the leg? Do you think this judge convinced anyone? Or do you think he hardened their hearts and made them say the whole system is rotten, I don't trust anyone or anything? Which do you think is more likely to have occurred? The people reading this ruling as if they would read a 2,000-page ruling, hundreds of pages in the executive summary. What a feast for lawyers this was. Do you think anyone who was a skeptic, a dissident, a contrarian, was convinced by this? I think the only convincing that happened is convincing people that they have no hope in the system, that they will not find any remedy, they will not find any justice in the justice system. Call it a legal system, for that it is, but a justice system, oh, you use that word too much. Let's play some clips. Here's Justice Rouleau saying that the threshold, which I just described to you, step one, is it a grave national emergency that puts the country in danger? And also in tandem, step two, no other law can handle it. Those are the two. It can't be one or the other. Both must be there. Neither were. Here's the judge. Listen.
After careful reflection, I have concluded that the very high threshold required for the invocation of the Act was met. In particular, for reasons that I discuss in detail in the report, I've concluded that when the decision was made to invoke the Act on February 14, 2022, Cabinet had reasonable grounds to believe that there existed a national emergency arising from threats to the security of Canada that necessitated the taking of special temporary measures. I do not come to this conclusion easily, as I do not consider the factual basis for it to be overwhelming. Reasonable and informed people could reach a different conclusion than the one I've arrived at. After careful...
What a liar. You saw, I was there. Bouncy castles, hot tubs, people spontaneously singing, "Oh Canada." You know, it was the most festive carnival atmosphere I've been to since I was a kid. There was no acts of violence. Violent crime fell in downtown Ottawa. There were attempts to smear it as violent. All of them were hoaxes, like the, oh my God, someone was trying to burn down an apartment hoax. They were all hoaxes, and those hoaxes were actually revealed in the inquiry. There was no requirement. You know what? The lanes of traffic were kept open by the truckers. There was horn honking, which was stopped once a judge ordered it to be stopped. That judge was an insider. It was an inside job. It was a stitch-up. Here's Justin Trudeau saying it was the necessary thing to do to protect people, which is a wicked lie. We saw testimony that what was motivating him was his political embarrassment. Protecting people. Protecting who from whom? There was violence. The violence was against our reporters and against peaceful protesters stomped by horses. Here, listen to the wicked liar.
Today, the Public Order Emergency Commission stated that the very high threshold to invoke the Emergencies Act was met. He found that what we experienced last year was a national emergency that threatened the security of Canadians. Our job as a government is always to keep people safe, and invoking the Emergencies Act was the necessary thing to do to remove the threat and to protect people. We've all been through a lot over these past years. Canadians have been stressed, faced real financial challenges, and lost loved ones. Many people came to Ottawa because they were hurting and wanted to be heard. In our country, everyone has the right to protest peacefully. Today,
but apparently not. Apparently not, because they were arrested, jailed, shot at, beat up, had their property seized, had their bank accounts frozen. And every single person to whom that was done was a peaceful protester. I don't know if you saw it out of the corner there. You had David Lametti, the disgraceful, unethical justice minister who was willing to do for Justin Trudeau what Jody Wilson-Raybould was unwilling to do, so of course he got the appointment. And on the other side, did you see that twitching, play it just in B-roll, sound down. Look in the bottom corner at the strange, creepy, twitchy Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland. There's something wrong with her. There's something wrong with her. Just play it. Twitching, blinking. I don't think she has a disability. I think she's just bloody weird. I mean, she's the woman who took off her shoes and socks and started clipping her toenails in Parliament. Like, just what is wrong with her? Fast forward a little, so yeah, just, a crick in her neck, and I just twist my head. It's really weird. These are gross people. I'm not just talking about the fact that she literally clipped her toenails in Parliament. Who does that? But the fact that they would destroy civil liberties but using the language of civil liberties was so gross to me. Chrystia Freeland is gross to me. You know what her job was before she became an MP, right? She was George Soros's authorized biographer. She was writing his official biography. That's your deputy prime minister. By the way, Trudeau absolutely does not regret seizing bank accounts. For him, it was the highlight. For him, he would do it again in a second. He would do it again in a second. Here, look at this clip. This is clip number 3. Absolutely no regrets. Take a look.
Wrapped up and had their financial assets frozen, but were not involved with the protest, an apology or compensation.
those were very important considerations that we're pleased that the government, that the commission highlighted, but I can tell you they were part of our deliberations as well. And as you say, the commissioner determined that those measures were appropriate and useful in this context. Absolutely, there are things to learn on how to do this better if ever a government has to face a similar situation. But we were incredibly thoughtful about how to make sure we could end this challenging situation as quickly and as safely as possible. And that's where the commissioner coming out and saying that this was appropriate and effective is a good thing, not just for the government, but for Canadians' confidence that our institutions are able to handle difficult situations.
You know, I believe that it is an unreported fact. And because it's unreported, I only am speculating here. But I read the emergency order that imposed martial law in Canada. And I want to let you know, and you probably do know, but let me remind you, that it applied to Canadian and foreign banks. And of course, most foreign banks in Canada are American banks. There's not a ton of American banks in this country. But there are dozens of different banks that are legally operating in Canada, registered with the Department of Finance, registered with our banking oversight rules. I forget what they're called. There is a list. I don't propose to look at them now, but if you go online, in fact, Efron, I bet you could find them super quick. Just Google U.S. banks operating in Canada. I bet within the first page of results, you can get the official list of American banks registered to operate in Canada. They would be Citibank, Wells Fargo. There would be a lot of the big banks. And, just if you can find it, don't knock yourself out. But obviously there's a lot of people that go between the two countries, and there's a lot of people with dual citizenship. And the two countries are so harmonized in their economies. Like, really, Canada and the United States are so integrated that, of course, there are American banks here, just like there are Canadian banks that are very active in the United States. RBC is very active in the United States. TD is very active in the United States. And you see that when you travel. Don't worry about it if you can't find it. Let me come back to my point. The Emergencies Act, the order under the Emergencies Act to seize and freeze bank accounts went to every bank in Canada, not just the Canadian banks. And it, at the same time, went to every insurance company operating in Canada, not just Canadian insurance companies. You might recall that they were ordered to cancel insurance policies on trucks. Okay, yeah, you got it here. Canadian banks. These are U.S. banks. Capital One. Yeah, I have a Capital One credit card. I forgot about it. Bank of New York, Fifth Third Bank, Citibank, Northern Trust, J.P. Morgan. And I actually know that this is just one. There's a lot of them. Thanks. I just wanted to, see, everyone knows there's American banks operating here. The law applied to them too. And yet not a single American bank froze an account of a trucker. Not one. Now, there may be different reasons for this. One, which I do not believe, is that there was simply no trucker who had an American bank account. I don't believe that. A lot of truckers operate back and forth. We talked about the Ambassador Bridge. There's some truckers that literally do nothing but drive back and forth between Canada and the United States, just round trips, just all the time. It's an enormous, actually. Really, you can do long-haul trucking in Canada, or you can do long-haul trucking between Canada and the United States. Probably going to be a lot more north and south than east and west, frankly. What's the closest big city to Vancouver? It's not Calgary, it's Seattle. What's the closest big city to Montreal? It's going to be in the United States. Think about it. Winnipeg, the closest big city is probably Minneapolis. I don't have a map in front of me. Chicago. So you got lots of north-south traffic. Why were no U.S. banks? Why did no U.S. banks seize trucker money, freeze trucker accounts, when surely they had truckers as clients? Why? Maybe they had no clients. I don't believe that. Maybe Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister at the time, maybe she didn't dare ask them to freeze accounts. Or maybe she did. Like I say, they were named in the order. And maybe they refused. I don't think we have all the facts on that. And why would an American bank refuse to freeze the bank account of a customer when the government of Canada demands it? Because it was done without judicial process and based on politics, the peaceful political expression of a protester. Because an American bank, and Citibank, Bank of America, J.P. Morgan, whatever, they're operating under Canadian law, but they're obviously operating under American law also. That's where their head office is. And the United States has a law called the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment of which guarantees freedom of speech, including political speech. So you're a U.S. bank, and you've got a customer who's a trucker who's protesting in Ottawa. And the Canadian finance minister says seize his bank account. But if you do that, you're breaking the law in the United States. But if you don't do that, you're breaking the law in Canada. Well, which do? You've got to choose. You're Citibank. You're Capital One. What do? Well, you maybe try and delay, you lawyer up, but at the end of the day, if Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland say you must rat out your customers, seize and freeze their bank account without judicial process because they embarrassed the Prime Minister, do you know what will happen if you're serious about that? If you dig in your heels on that? Those American banks will shut down in Canada because they have no choice. Because if you require an American bank to violate the First Amendment and privacy rights and other rights, consumer protection rights of a client, you're going to destroy that bank back in America. And the Canadian market is 38 million people, and it's a lively, wealthy market, but it's not wealthier than what they have going on back in the United States. And just like when Cuba nationalized things, Venezuela nationalized things, and every other third world banana republic dictator nationalizes things, a lot of foreign companies say, you know what, we just can't operate here anymore. What a sad shame. We love it here, but we cannot operate under a third world dictatorship, banana republic. We're going home. Sorry, our customers, we're closing your account. Could you imagine what that would have done to the Canadian economy if an American bank announced it was pulling out because of Trudeau's banana republic-style authoritarian ways? There already was capital flight, billions of dollars being withdrawn from Canadian bank accounts, sent to the U.S., or just frankly turned to gold and hidden under bank mattresses because Trudeau was seizing bank accounts. That was terrifying enough, but imagine if a single U.S. bank had said, we are temporarily suspending Canadian operations to paraphrase Trump, we can figure out what the hell is going on. Could you imagine if a single American bank issued a press release, probably would have come from New York City, probably would have been on letterhead saying, update Canadian operations, Bank of America, Citibank, Capital One, J.P. Morgan, Wells Fargo announces today the suspension of all operations in its 32 Canadian bank branches, pending a legal resolution of the Emergencies Act. The bank president said this, said that, because we can't violate our... Imagine if a press release went out. That would have tanked the Canadian dollar by 10 cents overnight. That would have caused such a run on the banks in Canada, of all banks, not just American banks. That would have destroyed the integration with the U.S. economy that I just described. I believe we may never know what phone calls were made by whom to whom. I don't know if it would have been a bank president or if it would have been the Secretary of the Treasury or the Vice President or someone in the United States, U.S. trade rep probably, calling up a counterpart in Canada, someone more serious than that fidgety biographer of Soros, someone more serious than the Prime Minister, someone more serious than that corrupt thug David Lametti. Someone serious in the United States calling up someone serious in Canada, calling up maybe Tiff Macklem, the Bank of Canada governor, maybe someone in the Federal Reserve calling up Tiff Macklem saying, hey, Tiff, who names their kid Tiff? Hey, Tiff, you got to stop that or you're going to be Venezuela-fied. I believe that. I believe that's a story we do not yet know the full contours of. Last clip, Justin Trudeau, in yet another lie, saying he regrets calling the freedom convoy a small fringe. Do you believe that? Here, listen to the liar lie.
Following today's report, do you have any regrets about calling Ottawa protesters a fringe minority?
Yeah, I wish I had said that differently. As I look back on that and as I've reflected on it over the past months, not just freshly from this Commissioner's report, I wish I had phrased it differently. The fact is, there is a very small number of people in this country who deliberately spread misinformation and disinformation that led to Canadians' deaths, that led to excessive hardship in people who believed them. I continue to be very, very firm against those individuals. But that is a small subset of people who were just hurting and worried and wanting to be heard. And as much as I tried to emphasize throughout the time that, of course, we're always going to stand up for freedom of speech and freedom to protest peacefully, I wish I hadn't said something that was able to be spread larger. If I had chosen my words a bit careful, been more specific, I think things might have been a bit easier.
Yeah.
You got to pay attention to the way this liar lies. He's a sociopath. You know, there's a word in Chinese, I've forgotten how to say it in Chinese, but the word is ironic apology. I'm sorry that you were upset. Oh, okay, so you're not sorry that you did it. You're just sorry about, you're not even sorry for the consequences. You're sorry that I'm sorry you're so upset. I'm sorry that some people took my words out of context. So you're not actually sorry for what you said. You're sorry for what other people did. They're to blame as always. And he says that he is sorry that he used the word small fringe. But then a moment later, he talks about a small fringe that he just really hates. The small fringe who deliberately traded misinformation and information and caused more deaths. Okay, so you're sorry you said it, but then you're just re-saying it again and actually blaming them for deaths. So you're definitely not sorry because you just re-said it. And you said some people just wanted to be heard, but you refused to meet with them. But back to the question, are you sorry? When people say sorry, it usually sounds like, I'm sorry, or I apologize. He didn't apologize there, did he? He said he regretted some of the language because it was spread further, but he then repeated it and said, oh no, there was this really nasty small group that was spreading information that led to death. And they were doing that on purpose. They were deliberately spreading misinformation that caused death on purpose. Who would do that? Is that what he thinks it means to disagree with him? That the only people who can disagree with Justin Trudeau are people who deliberately want others to die. I disagree with Justin Trudeau on many things, maybe most things. And I don't want people to die. In fact, one of the reasons I disagree with him is I believe that his policies lead to more death. I believe the lockdowns were far more devastating than the virus itself. I believe that we don't know the long-term consequences of the vaccine itself. I believe that the increase in depression, alcohol, and drug use. In fact, I know in British Columbia that the death toll from increased drug and suicides is already larger than the death toll from the virus itself. So I would say that I am motivated not just by searching for truth, but I actually think that Trudeau's misinformation and disinformation, whether it was about vaxes or masks, led to more deaths. But does he really think that people who he thinks are wrong are deliberately wrong? Like, who would think that? I think that there are a few things that Justin Trudeau truly lies about. There are. But in most cases, I would acknowledge that he's just wrong. That he has the wrong ideology, that he has the wrong facts, that he has the wrong worldview. But I don't think in most cases I would say he is deliberately trying to kill people. I just don't think I would bring myself to say that, because I just don't think I believe that. I believe in most cases where he's wrong, he's just wrong. But you just heard him. He said that the people who were opposing him were deliberately spreading falsehoods. They weren't wrong or mistaken. They knew they were wrong and were lying on purpose. What a sociopath. And that is in the guise of regret. Hey, you know what? We're halfway done. We got a break for an ad. I want to play for you an ad about our Freedom Passport. It's not ours, sorry, we're advertising. I love this Freedom Passport. It's like a passport. Not a vaccine passport, but a Freedom Passport. And it's a reminder that Canadians have civil liberties too. And it's been a wonderful partnership between Rebel News and the Freedom Passport folks, who I first met over a year ago at a Democracy Fund event. Anyway, great folks. Take a look at this ad.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
If you want to look good and shine like me, you can do so at our store. Go to ribbonnewstore.com. On this website, you have so much different style to wear, as this one, my favorite one, Justin Castro. With my code Alexa10, you will have 10% off on your next purchase. So don't hesitate, go now and look so good like me.
You know, I love both those ads. I have that Justin Castro shirt. In fact, it's in my office. I was just looking at it this morning. And I'm trying to figure out where I should wear it. I think I'm just going to, my wife wouldn't want to go out and about on the streets with me. Not that she's in favor of Trudeau. I think she would just say, can we just go out and not have every person on the street come over and talk to you about the shirt? But let me tell you, if you were looking to make friends, that shirt is the way. You wear that shirt on the street. People will, they'll go like that. Because they'll do a double take. What's that? And they'll usually react with anger when they think you're wearing a pro-Trudeau shirt. And then so my point about going out in that shirt is, don't wear that shirt out with the family or with friends if you want to do other things besides talk about the shirt. It's such a conversation starter, that shirt. There's a reason it's our number one bestseller. That shirt is amazing. And I have given that shirt as a gift to various people, including in Quebec, who love it. And I just want to say one more thing about Freedom Passport. I have American friends and American family, and they have tons of these little, pocket Constitution, pocket Bill of Rights. It's just a real thing in America that everyone has their little copy of it. And I like the idea the Freedom Passport gives you that in Canada. We need to, anyhow, I'm just really pleased with those ads. Hey, it's 1:42 Eastern Time, 11:42 Mountain Time. I'm cognizant of the hour. But, one of our favorite people to interview every now and then is Project Veritas. And we're friends with James O'Keefe, who is the boss over there, the founder of it. But we've gotten to know other people there over the course of time. And they just had a huge story about a month ago. It was actually right after our interview, walking scrum with Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer, on the streets of Davos. Like a week later, James O'Keefe's Project Veritas rolls out this undercover sting operation where they got a director of some, I forget his title, at Pfizer to talk about how they were deliberately mutating viruses and like doing crazy, dangerous things with them. It was the most successful video that Project Veritas ever had. And I was in awe of them. And I've said it before, I think they are the most effective news organization in America. You don't even have to call them the most effective conservative. Who breaks more news than them? No one. So I was really worried when I started hearing rumors of James O'Keefe being fired by his own organization. How do you get fired by an organization that you founded? Do we have a clip from, I want to show you a clip. He had a 45-minute video that was posted online. I watched the whole thing, and I really felt for James O'Keefe. Here, we'll just play a little clip because I'm very worried about my favorite American news organization losing its champion, founder, chief journalist, chief fundraiser, chief gospel spreader. Like, he is the indispensable man. How do you have Project Veritas without James O'Keefe? I don't know, but he's gone from there. If you have the time, you should watch the whole 45-minute video. I found it quite sad, but here's a minute of James O'Keefe.
That tweet failed to mention that by then I had been removed from the board and indefinitely suspended as CEO. Why didn't they put that part in? This is where things get really messed up. A few days later, an officer sent an email to the board with bizarre hyperbole and innuendo about certain expenses related to our business needs. These included, and you can't make this up, that Project Veritas paid for James O'Keefe's down payment of his wedding. I got a chuckle out of this. I'm not married. I've never been married. I do hope to get married one day. In fact, I got married to you in Oklahoma, but that was pretend. That was fun. Everyone enjoyed it. We rented a charter bus. We all went down. Everyone enjoyed that musical, or at least I thought. I'm not married, but the truth of the expense, the $12,000, was that it was a payment for our annual Project Veritas Christmas party. Remember that? You guys were there? Some of you brought your spouses? The officer lied by omission, excluding the purpose of paying the $12,000 for the wedding venue. It looked like Project Veritas was reimbursing me for a wedding venue. Why would the officer lie like that?
You know what? I watched the whole thing, and part of it felt like you're watching dirty laundry, and I don't like that. It felt a little gossipy, but I understand why he did it, because they were smearing him. In fact, they in response to that, they put out an official statement. And I watched this whole video, and I admire James O'Keefe because he does real journalism. There's no other way to describe it. He does high-risk, high-stress journalism, sending undercover operatives to sting powerful people. It's a special skill set. He's the best at it. Extremely important stories that he covers. I'm in awe of them. And James O'Keefe has built that thing up. There's this one slide in his presentation where he shows their financials. They raised $22 million last year. In 2016, they were 4-point-something million. So in 6 years, they've more than quadrupled. They've almost quintupled. And James is the driving force behind that. And if you've ever met James, and I've had the pleasure of meeting him, 4 times or something, he's got a very particular personality, and you just know that is how he finds the drive. And that's how he resists the stress. And he's not a touchy-feely guy. For all I know, he's on the spectrum or whatever they say. He is stubborn, as you would expect someone like him would be. So in his 45-minute disquisition there, he talks about, well, I should have said happy birthday to you, and maybe I was gruff to you. And yeah, okay, we get it. You're a crusading person with no time to waste. And I get, you know what? There's no one who knows Project Veritas who doesn't know what James O'Keefe is like. He is a founder. And for them to get rid of a founder, and anyway, so there's this list. Oh, by the way, you can see the financials here. It's amazing. In 10 years, to take Project Veritas from less than $1 million to $22 million. And the last few years have just been staggering. Like I say, 4 point something million in 2016 to 22 million last year. The last few years, almost 50% growth per year. In fact, 2019 to 2020 there, if I'm looking at that correctly, like almost 100% growth. 2019, 2020, just unbelievable. Unbelievable. The reason I mention that is that Project Veritas's board, who don't even sign their put out this statement, and one of the things they're really mad about, give me 1 second here, and maybe you think I'm just coming to the aid of my buddy, and I don't want to pretend that I'm close with James O'Keefe, but I'm an admirer of his, who's had the pleasure of meeting him a few times. So he spends 300 days a year on the road raising funds. Like James O'Keefe, because he's so well known, he no longer personally does the undercover journalism because people would recognize him. So he does the hard part, which is raising the money. So he's on the road almost every day. And how do you get around America when you're on the road? Well, you use Uber. And if you've ever used Uber, you can get what's called Uber X, which is the cheapest kind of car. And it can be a crummy little car sometimes. Ubers are generally sort of clean and sort of, in good repair. But if you pay a few extra bucks, you get what's called Uber Black, which is typically a slightly fancier or more premium vehicle. So apparently one of the big beefs that Project Veritas' board has with him is that his Uber expense for the last 12 months was $100,000, which sounds shocking, right? Or 150 grand in 18 months. Okay, well, if you're traveling every single day to the airport, from the airport to a meeting, back to the hotel, it's going to be $100,000 a year. I know that sounds shocking, and maybe traveling Uber Black instead of crummy or Uber X, maybe that is 25% higher than it should be. All right, you're going to fire your founder, CEO, and most well-known household name guy because he used a cab company that was a little too famous? Or there's another one, $60,000 in losses by putting together dance events such as Project Veritas Experience. Obviously, it wasn't a dance event. It was like a Turning Point USA thing where they may have had a dance. Calling it a dance event is so obviously untrue. You have an annual budget of $22 million. You're trying new things. You put on an event and it loses money. Okay, so don't do it again or see how you can improve. You're firing your CEO because an event lost some money. Or the first one there, $14,000 on a charter flight to meet someone to fix his boat under the guise of meeting with a donor. James O'Keefe specifically addresses that in the video, saying no, he actually had 3 donor meetings. And if this is why you're sacking your founder, your chief journalist, your chief fundraiser, I don't believe you. I'm not here to say that every single expense James O'Keefe made was kosher. I'm not involved. I have no inside information. But if this is the worst of it, if this is all the stuff they could dig up on him, if this is their mighty response, I don't believe them. I do not believe that they fired James O'Keefe because he used Uber Black instead of Uber X. I don't believe that because that's insane, because no one would do that. And by the way, I don't think a donor would say, I'm outraged that your CEO took Uber Black instead of Uber. I just don't believe that. I think there's a collateral purpose, a hidden purpose, that they're getting rid of him for some other reason they're not stating. And James O'Keefe has bruited the idea that it has to do with the Pfizer investigation. I don't know. He himself says he's speculating because none of it makes sense. Oh, he's really brusque with staff and he's not gentle with staff. I'm sure that's true, by the way. And I'm sure that is not a surprise to his donors or, frankly, his staff, who learn a lot from him. And if they don't like it, they can move on. No one's a slave. I think James O'Keefe is pound for pound the most effective journalist in America, period. You can add the word conservative in there if you like, but frankly, how is exposing Pfizer conservative or liberal? It's just anti-corruption. How is exposing, they expose so many different people. I don't even think it's a right-left thing. I think he has more scoops than the New York Times. It's obviously not true numerically, but it's incredible what he's done with his small team. I think it's an inside job. I think they're trying to get rid of him, undermine him, but I don't think it's going to work. I think his reputation is so strong and so widespread that if he pops up with some new organization, no matter what it's called, I don't think it should be called JamesO'Keefe.com because it's bigger than him. I don't think he would name it that. In fact, he didn't. He named his company Project Veritas. I think that 90% of the donors from Project Veritas will leave and go and find him wherever he is next. I don't know. I'm sorry to see this kind of infighting, and I'm sorry to see this kind of airing of dirty laundry. But if this is the best rationale that unnamed board members on Project Veritas can come up with, I just don't find it convincing. I hope that in his new organization, which I think James O'Keefe is going to start, that he has some form of control of the organization so this can't happen to him again. Of course you want outside eyes on the finances, and as a registered IRS charity, they're audited by external auditors. So I think they already have some of that. And of course you want your donors to be able to look over how you're spending money. And for them to be able to decide, okay, James, you used Uber X. I'm not going to give you money for your exposés because you drove in a Uber Black instead of Uber X. I just don't believe that any grown-up would say, fire him over that. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. You didn't ride in the crummy Camry. You went in a town car. Therefore, you're fine. I don't believe that. I don't believe that as an excuse. I don't believe a single donor said that. And if they said that, well, they can stop giving money. Something else is afoot here. But I believe that James O'Keefe will rise again. I believe it'll happen quite quickly. And I believe that there are very, very few people who are just there for Project Veritas without James O'Keefe. Some people wrote to me and said, hey, Ezra, you should make an offer to James O'Keefe. Well, first of all, we don't have enough dough. Second of all, we're based in Canada, and he is focused almost exclusively in America, if not exclusively. And third of all, I think what this shows is that he has to be his own boss. He just has to be. And by the way, I think he can be and will be. And I look forward to what he does next. All right, we got time for one more ad. Don't go away. We'll play an ad, and I'll come right back with some final thoughts about Russia and Ukraine.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
Oh, hey guys, thanks for watching the live stream, and sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to pop on to tell you about this incredible sweatshirt that I'm wearing, but also all the other great merchandise that we have available at rebelnewsstore.com. We're adding new stuff all the time, so be sure to keep checking. Even if you shop today, there might be something new tomorrow. And if you are shopping, be sure to use the coupon code Sheila10 for 10% off at checkout. Again, it's rebelnewsstore.com, coupon code Sheila10 for 10% off at checkout.
I actually don't think I saw that shirt that said "Can't Stop a Fart" before. That mask. That's really funny. You know, people are still out there wearing masks. It's crazy. Hey, can I tell you a quick story? I go to doctors from time to time, and I hate the fact that at least here in Ontario, a lot of doctors' offices still tell you to wear masks. It's madness. It's unscientific. The other day, yesterday, in fact, what am I saying? I went and I donated blood. And I felt good about it. You know, when I was in college, I used to donate blood all the time, and I just felt really good about it. I felt like that's something that anyone could do. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be clever. You don't have to be anything other than human and willing to give up a little bit of your time and a unit of your blood. It's a really easy way to do an important favor for someone because I don't need to convince you of it. Anyway, I used to do it a lot when I was in college, and then I don't know why I stopped, but I started again. And I went to, it was actually in a local building in the community, and it was a whole system, and they got a ton of questionnaires. In fact, one of the questions they asked is if you got a vax in the last 3 months, you can't give. Isn't that funny? They didn't ask if you were jabbed or not. They asked if you got a jab in the last 3 months. They didn't say, are you vaxxed or are you not vaxxed? They just want to know, did you get a jab in the last 3 months? Isn't that interesting? And they ask a ton of questions. These are all new since when I was in college because, of course, the tainted blood with Red Cross before. Anyway, so I went through all the questionnaires, and I gave blood, and I felt good about it. But let me tell you, they did not require masks there. Some of the officials, like the staff, had masks, but they did not make you wear a mask. And I thought to myself, isn't that funny? When I myself really need to go to the doctor, they force me to wear a mask or no health care. But when they want something from me, my blood, oh, no, sir, no requirements for a mask. And no requirements to be vaccinated. Isn't that interesting? I found that very interesting. No masks, in fact, if you had a vax in the last 3 months, they don't even want you. Now, I didn't politicize it. I was just there to give the blood. I wasn't there to cause a fight. But I thought that was very interesting. Speaking of masks, did you see this tweet the other day from Kamala Harris? Actually, I think this was yesterday. This really bugged me. Kamala Harris, who's got that cackle. Here she is. My message to, what does it say? Black women and girls everywhere. My message to black women and girls everywhere: never ask for permission to lead. Okay, I think you can give that message to people of all races and all backgrounds, but why is the young girl forced to wear a mask, but Kamala Harris not wearing a mask? I don't get it. I mean, kids are at an extremely low risk from the virus, and I don't really think masks work. I think there's new studies showing that. But even if I'm wrong and masks do work, why is only the child wearing the mask but not the politician? I don't get it. Actually, I completely get it. It's hierarchy, isn't it? It's hierarchy. She's above you, and she wants you to know it. Hey, can we get a quick clip of our friend Esty? Just anyone will do. One of her more popular. You know, once in a while, we play a silly video. I discovered her online, and I reached out to her, and once in a while we hire her to do silly Kamala impressions for us. She is so good. That cackle, that's the key to getting the Kamala, is the cackle. And the fact that our talent, her name is Esty, actually looks a little bit like Kamala Harris in terms, even just her hair and her skin tone, I think is remarkable. I think it's the best Kamala Harris impression out there. Here, you tell me, take a look.
No exhaust, no diesel smell. The bus has Wi-Fi and even USB outlets next to every seat. I mean, come on, imagine. You can charge your phone on your way home from work. That's good stuff.
When it rains, windshield wipers. That's right, every single school bus. It's gonna wipe. Whoa. A speedometer.
What?
To be able to feel the wind in your hair at the press of a button. I mean, America. This is it. This is as good as it's gonna get with this administration. I may not be the first woman vice president, but I will be the last.
There's sort of a Wicked Witch thing going on there, too. That Sam Hyde video, by the way, of the windshield wiper is classic. Sam Hyde is maybe even naughtier than our old friend Gavin McInnes. And I'm glad we managed to work that video in. Hey, there is something serious. Let me end on a serious note. I'm going to do my show about this tonight. I don't know if you know this, but every day at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, I do a produced show. We call it the Ezra Levant Show for reasons that are obvious. And I do a monologue that's a little bit produced, a little bit scripted. And then I typically interview a guest. And then I read my hate mail and fan mail, whichever there is. And I got to tell you, it's weighing on my mind the prospect of war. I see Joe Biden landing in Kiev. I see Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, saying he's proud to be the first Western nation to provide long-range weapons to Ukraine, so they can attack Russia itself. I see China saying, we're going to do military deals with Russia. I see the head of NATO saying they're running out of ammunition. The whole of NATO is using its ammunition up faster in Ukraine than it can replenish it. And then I see Zelensky, and I don't even know who is, I'm not going to call him a puppet, though he clearly, when there's $100 billion US pouring into the country, that's who the president of the Ukraine is. The president is the money, and whoever's behind it. What oligarch? Well, there's Ukrainian oligarchs, including the oligarch who was Zelensky's protector and mentor for years. Kolomoisky is his name. But I think there's much bigger oligarchs in Ukraine now, and many of them are American. Who would ask Zelensky to say this? Or did Zelensky come up with it himself? Look at this insane headline. You could see it everywhere. Here's the New York Post. China backing Russia in Ukraine would mean World War III. Zelensky. Can we pump up the quote there? Let's see if we can quote him as verbatim as possible. I'm sure he said it in a foreign language. Yeah, just make that a touch bigger so I can read it. Thanks very much. World War III could break out if China actively supports Russia in its year-long battle to subdue Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky has said. Quote, for us, it is important that China does not support the Russian Federation in this war, the Ukrainian president told German daily Die Welt on Monday. In fact, I would like it to be on our side. At the moment, however, I don't think it's possible. Because if China allies itself with Russia, there will be a world war. And I do not think that China is aware of that. The Ukrainian president's remark come one day after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken admitted the U.S. was very concerned that China is considering providing lethal support to Russia as it continues its long invasion of its western neighbor. Blinken told NBC's Meet the Press Sunday that he told his Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi, that such a move would have serious consequences in our relationship. Oh, how serious would that be? They flew over a series of spy balloons over the United States, and all that Antony Blinken did was say, guys, everything's still fine. I'm just going to postpone my visit to Beijing. I don't know if he's quite an up-talker like that, but it sure came across that way. By the way, I think that China is already on Russia's side, and I know this for a number of reasons. Number one, China has not imposed sanctions on Russia. Number two, China has filled the gap in Russia for goods that the West has blockaded, for example, motor vehicles and cell phones. Russia and China had already done enormous energy deals, and of course, China does whatever it can around the world to thwart American interests. So China is already on Russia's side. The only innovation being contemplated is that Chinese military equipment be sent to Russia to assist in the war. Though skeptics or critics or even a neutral observer would say, why can NATO send such equipment to Ukraine to fight for them by proxy, but China can't have a proxy either? That's not consistent. Now, you don't have to be consistent in war. You don't have to be anything, but it's quite an observation. I'm scared by this. I do not support Russia's war in Ukraine, but nor do I support the escalation of that war into a world war. as Zelensky has repeatedly done, and as Western leaders seem intent on doing. I find it very nerve-wracking, and I can't even believe it. A year ago, before the invasion, could 1 in 1,000 people find Ukraine on a map? And I say this as someone whose family came from Ukraine in 1903. And even today, could you find Ukraine on a map? Don't lie. What's the national interest there? I'm worried about it. I'll talk about that tonight at 8. That's it for now. You know what? I got a super chat I'm going to read. Forgive me. Don't let me go without doing that. By the way, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. There's 2 of them. Just a Bot says, Judge Rouleau to Canadian public, there is no difference between peaceful protests and violent rioting. The government can strip you of your civil liberties either way. Might as well resist forcefully. Well, I don't believe in resisting forcefully. And by the way, if you try resisting a policeman forcefully, you're gonna come out the loser in that one. But it is true that the violence during the trucker convoy came from the government side. Adam Ott says, Happy Tuesday, Ezra. I hope you enjoyed the day off yesterday. Do you realize the Canadian Blood Services still mandates COVID vaccines on its employees and volunteers? It's very clear on their website. I did not know that. Thank you for telling me that. That would not change my decision to give blood, which I stand by, and frankly, I felt good about it. Felt that's a tiny thing I can do to make a tiny difference in one person's life. But that is atrocious. I'm not vaxxed. I went there. I was never asked if I was vaxxed. I was not asked if I was masked. I was not told to be masked. The fact that volunteers had to be vaxxed makes no sense. It never did make sense because, as we now know, vaccines don't stop transmission. And it's just bullying, isn't it? That's very frustrating to hear. Well, it's 2:10 Eastern Time. I'm going to say goodbye until tonight. On behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters, to you at home, goodbye. And keep fighting for freedom.